Welcome into another episode of the Prep Extra Podcast. I'm Colton Stone alongside, as always, Chris Basnett. A little different scenario here, of course, on this Halloween Monday. But prep football doesn't stop for anything. No holidays, no nothing. So we just got to keep rolling through. But before we get to it, Chris, first full weekend, I should say first full Friday of every class of prep football playoffs. It feels like this is truly the fun part of the season because we of course had some blowouts. We expected that, but we also had some incredible comebacks and some, near upsets and some upsets too.
Yeah. First off, my apologies to Lincoln Southwest, who I picked to lose to Millard West in the first round. That was the only game I missed in the Class A bracket, but Silverhawks played well. But yeah, kind of one of those just classic, first weekend games. Grand Island Northwest beating Elkhorn in a 13-4 game. In Class B is the one that kind of stands out. Unbeaten Ainsworth going down to Elm Creek in D1. Osceola going down to Bloomfield in a great game in D2. Excuse me, the Ainsworth game was in D2 as well. Mm-hmm. The eight-man bracket saw, I think, a lot of turnover.
We saw Weeping Water win again.
Weeping Water win again. I've got Weeping Water in the semifinals, so I'm feeling really good about that pick. Beat 15 seed Weeping Water, beat their second straight unbeaten. Beat Cross County 2 weeks ago. Beat Laurel Concord Coleridge this last Friday. Mm-hmm. They're 6-4. Now they get the 7 seed Clarkson Lee with a trip to the semifinals on the line, and the potential to maybe meet another unbeaten in Stanton in that semifinals after Stanton plays Nebraska Christian, who upset Thayer Central in their first round game. So it's a fun time of year. It's not so fun for those teams that lose that first game and see their season in, but it's fun to kind of watch all the upsets play out and see some of the unexpected teams advance to the next round.
Yeah. And I think the biggest near upset, of course, came at the hands of a Lincoln school. Gretna, we kind of thought, hey, we talked about it quite literally last week. Gretna should kind of, maybe not coast their way through, but it seems like, hey, these guys are leaps and bounds better than everyone. And Lincoln Southeast pushed them right to the end.
Yeah, Lincoln Southeast was thrown into the end zone with a chance to win that game late. And who would have thought that? And that's not to say that Lincoln Southeast is a bad team or anything like that. They played exceptionally well. Owen Baxter played a great game going up against, who's the guy who's widely considered the best quarterback, maybe the best football player in the state, in Zane Flores, and went toe-to-toe with him. And Southeast goes toe-to-toe with Gretna and almost kind of pulls an all-timer there. That would have been one of the bigger wins. And Southeast, of course, has great history with his football program, but that would be right up there with just about any win Southeast has had, I would think, just because of the pure, unexpected nature of Southeast, potentially winning that game. But to push Gretna the whole way, I was over at the Southwest game, and you're kind of seeing the updates roll across Twitter, and you go, oh, okay, they hung in there for a quarter. Oh, okay, they hung in there for a half. Oh, okay, it's the fourth quarter, and they're like in the lead, and they might do this thing. So, no, you give a lot of credit to Southeast. The Knights have had an up and down year. They've battled some injuries this year, but great effort by the Knights in pushing Gretna right to the end.
Yeah, and if anything, you could, if you're Gretna, the upside of that game is, okay, we figured out how we can battle with the team throughout an entire game and then, still dig deep and find a way to win. Of course, there were chances that they could have squandered it, but, there was a lot of time on the clock towards the end of the game. They could have seen Southeast score and maybe still put something together, but, it was good, I think, for Gretna. The upside for them, of course, is, okay, we've now played in a tight competitive game. Now we're going to see Bellevue West.
Yeah, I think it just illustrates how kind of wide open this bracket is. You look at the 8 teams that are left and you go, okay, Gretna, West Side. But, man, let's not forget what Bellevue West almost did to Gretna a few weeks ago when Gretna had that crazy rally to win 40-37. Creighton Prep has played Gretna, played Bellevue West, played all these great teams close, hasn't gotten over the hump against them. They're still alive. They're playing Elkhorn South this week. That's 2 teams that I think are certainly semifinal worthy and finals worthy. On the other side, West Side's been there all year. We know that. Millard South is one of the best teams in the class with Cam Koschel at quarterback. And then you look at Grand Island, who beat Omaha North twice this season to get to the quarterfinals. So it's a class that, it's good that Gretna got pushed. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, I think it just illustrates that it's that thing we talked about last week. Any given night, any given team, if it's the right matchup, anybody's got a shot in that bracket.
Yeah, you talk about Millard South, a bit of a surprise, but not because of not because of the win. The surprise is just that they started off so slow, and come to find out, hey, we didn't have our quarterback, and then it's almost like they drop him in, and all of a sudden, I mean, this is a team that, if the right things bounce their way, they could easily be in Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, this team has one loss with Cam Koschel at quarterback, and that loss is in overtime to Omaha West Side, who was ranked number one most of the season. So that tells you the talent level on that roster. And they have to take a tough trip out to Kearney, which is a really hard place to play for anybody, much less an Omaha team coming 3 hours to the west. And we talk about the offense and everything else, but their defense has 2 pick sixes in a 2-score game. And that ends up kind of being the difference. So yeah, Millard South has as good a chance as anybody. You have to think they really like their draw right now. Getting Grand Island, they have to travel again out to Grand Island this Friday, and that's no gimme. Like we said, the Islanders have been really good this year, but you win that game, there's a chance you're seeing Omaha West Side again in the semifinals, and you can play with them. You probably have a pretty good chance to beat them. So yeah, if you're Millard South, even with a 6-4 record, you feel pretty good about where you're at right now.
Yeah, truly, their only downside is the wild card points they kind of got stuck with, because they don't get to play at home. That's essentially the downfall for them. And of course, you briefly mentioned it, but Lincoln Southwest, bit of a revenge game, getting a win over Millard West. And moving on, of course, the reward is playing Omaha West Side on the road, but big win for Southwest to take one in the first round.
Really, I think the thing I noticed most about that was the celebration after the game for the Southwest guys. You could tell that was a game they really won. They felt like they let one get away the first time these teams played, and they kind of did. Let's be honest. Millard West throws a 70-yard touchdown pass with about a minute 15 left in that game to win, after Southwest had led the whole way. And Southwest led the whole way in this one again. And, they're up 31-10 in the fourth quarter. You're going, man. And I think I even tweeted that after that last touchdown, boy, that's the dagger. Southwest is going to do this. And of course, Millard West returns the kickoff, gets the onside kick, drives down inside the 5 again. But, I wrote it for today's paper. It's Southwest seniors making plays. Cal Newell goes over 200 yards. Colin Fritton has a great game at quarterback. They have a senior pick recover the fumble inside the 5 after the onside kick. So that's a great win for Southwest. That's their first playoff win in the non-COVID division since 2011. So it's a big step for that program and for Andrew Sherman, the head coach. And yeah, like you said, the reward now is Omaha West Side. And now you've got that playoff when you're almost playing with house money a little bit, because nobody's expecting you to win Friday night. You can go play loose and free, and you feel pretty good. But at the same time, you've got a really good player in Cal Newell at running back. And if Southwest can find a way to get a lead in that game into the second half, you've got a horse that you can hand it to and run clock and shorten the game and give yourself a chance. And look, it's been proven that West Side isn't invincible. They have the loss this year. They were pushed to overtime by Millard South. Southwest can go in there and win this game. Is it going to be easy? No, it's not. And it's never easy in the playoffs, but they've got a shot. And all you want this time of year is a shot. So that's what Southwest has, and we'll see what they can do with it.
Yeah, we've seen time and time again that West Side has had to, come out in the second half and make adjustments. They're not a team that not always going into halftime with a lead. They have to, adjust to what the other team is throwing at them. Now, they've been one of the better adjusted teams in the second half, of course, but it is, you can kind of piece together the games where they've either gone down at halftime or gone to overtime, whatever it may be. You can kind of piece the things that work together, and if Southwest can get the right ones together, again, anything can happen on a Friday night.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think there's going to be much argument that West Side has the best collection of, probably overall athletes in the class, just with the way they have those guys kind of spread around at different positions all over the field. But yeah, again, if Southwest hits on the right combination, if they get that game into the second half with the lead, then who knows? We know that Omaha West Side is going to be facing a lot of pressure because a lot of people expect them to make the championship game, and I've expected them to make the championship game all season. Now here's the Silverhawks, who nobody expected to be in the finals, and not a lot of people expected to be in the quarterfinals. Let's be honest. But again, that's why you play them, right? If it's a game into the second half, you kind of start leaning on Southwest a little bit because they've got some pieces that can get it done if they give themselves a chance.
Yeah. Chris, looking at Class B, pretty much what I don't want to say what we expected, but if you just looked at it purely seeding wise, kind of what we expected to happen. Biggest upset is GI Northwest over Elkhorn High. Watched the end of that game. It was interesting. Like I have covered a handful of Elkhorn football games, and that was, I don't know, it just didn't seem, something just seemed off. But again, Friday night Northwest, they just put together the right game plan on the road, and there they are sitting in the quarterfinals now.
Yeah, that's an incredible win for Northwest. And again, you look at the record, and you almost have to throw that out a little bit. And obviously the games count, but you look at who they played. They lose to Aurora week 1, who nobody's beaten Aurora this year. They lose a 5-point game to Scott. They lose a 2-point game to Seward. They lose a 7-point game to Scottsbluff. They lose a 3-point game to York. It's not like they've been getting blown out in these games. It's been one possession games in their losses, and they just haven't found a way to get over the hump. Same thing happens last Friday night. It's a one possession game, but they get the field goal at the end after that, like you said, that kind of crazy final minute there in Elkhorn. So this is a team that's not afraid of the moment. They had a chance to beat Scottsbluff out in Scottsbluff halfway through the season. They've been in these situations before. So pretty cool. Again, pretty cool to see the upset. Not so cool if you're Elkhorn. But now, again, your reward is getting to face a Waverly team who we've talked about plenty here with that great defense, who's playing at home. But you know what? You did it once. And again, Northwest has no fear of anybody. If they can get it to the fourth quarter, there's not going to be a lot of nervousness on that sideline because they've been in this situation several times, and now they found a way to get over the hump.
Yeah, and Waverly cruising past Norris. I think they were the better team, hands down, and the defense for Waverly has just been, suffocating at points where the other team has just a difficult time even moving the ball against them. But Northwest in the past has kind of been Waverly's kryptonite. So that is a matchup that's interesting because, again, much like Southwest, Northwest, you're going in with nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, you lose to, quote, a better team. Best case scenario, you're in the semifinals.
Yeah, exactly. And both those teams look at that, and you look at what's on the other side of that bracket, and it's probably going to be Bennington, assuming they beat Elkhorn North. But Elkhorn North played Bennington as tough as anybody this year. Let's not forget that. Only gave up 21 points to the Badgers, which is the fewest anybody's allowed. But you have to think Waverly with that defense would feel pretty good trying to match up with Bennington's offense. And again, Northwest isn't afraid of anybody if they win that game. So yeah, that's a game. I think that Waverly Northwest game is one you look at, and both teams are going into that saying, "Oh yeah, we can win this game." This is not a mismatch by any means. And Waverly, even as a 5 seed playing the 13, they've got to be ready to go because, like we said, Northwest could very easily make the trip out there and win that game.
Yep. And then looking at the rest of that top half of that bracket, Pius Falls, Elkhorn North, as you mentioned. Elkhorn North just kind of looked like the better team in the second half. Seemed like a similar story for Pius that we've seen all season, hang around for a half, and then it kind of starts to fall a little to the wayside. But what they did this season, it may not have resulted in a playoff victory, but they hung with the best teams in the state, and I think that's still something to be proud of. I mean, you still won 5 ball games, and the other 5, if it bounces the right way, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about a team that's been in Class A for the past several years and then dropped down to B and play maybe the toughest schedule in Class B when it's all said and done. And like you said, in just about all those games that they lost into halftime, into the second half, just maybe didn't have quite enough to get over the hump in those games, but they win a district title. They played Norris for a district title and blow Norris out to win a district title. And that's something that you can point to as you kind of go into the off season now and move forward going, look, when we had a big moment, we were able to rise to it. And now that's something they can build on. Elkhorn North, of course, first playoff appearance in school history, first playoff win in school history. That's great for that program. It shows you how quickly it can happen if you have the right people in place. But yeah, if you're Pius, not a whole lot to be upset about. You probably feel like you let a couple games get away there. But again, you played an absolutely horrifically tough schedule all year. And to do what Pius did, they battled some injuries, especially up front on the lines. They kind of had to piece it together there for a few games. If they're able to stay fully healthy through the whole year, who knows how it turns out. But at the end of the day, you probably take 5. If you're looking at that schedule before the season, you probably go, you know what, 5-5 is not going to be too bad with the teams we're playing.
Yeah. Before we move on from B, is the bottom half still Scottsbluff's to lose?
Yeah, I think so. That Scottsbluff game feels like one of those classic, 14-7 November games where it's just two teams smashing into each other. Scottsbluff made it look easy against Plattsmouth in the first round. They get to stay at home, of course. Scott travels out there to play the Bearcats. The York Gross game, I think, is really interesting to me. I think York plays good enough defense and can run the ball enough to give Gross some issues. So I think there's some intrigue in that game. But yeah, Scottsbluff right now, they've been tested enough this year. They get to stay at home all the way through, to the semifinals if they make it that far. So I think you have to like Scottsbluff, at least for this Friday for sure.
Moving on to Class C1, maybe one of the best games of Friday, Lincoln Christian, that 8-9 matchup in C1 against Roncalli. Outscores Roncalli 21-7 in the second half, goes for 2 at the end, I guess maybe it was a kick, but has to make the extra point at the end to take a 1-point lead. And then there's still, there wasn't much time. There was still a little bit of time that Roncalli could have done something with it, but instead, Lincoln Christian is now 8-2, and they're in the quarterfinals of C1. And unfortunately, they have to play Aurora.
Yeah. It's again, nice reward for winning that game last Friday. That you have to give a lot of credit to Lincoln Christian. Omaha and Roncalli came in with one of the best quarterbacks in the state, Brady McGill. I watched Roncalli against Ashland Greenwood, another really, really good program. And that was a game that went right down to the wire and a game that anybody could have won. And I walked away from that going, man, Ashland Greenwood's really good. Roncalli is really good too. And they had a lot of weapons on offense. They obviously showed them against Lincoln Christian, but man, give the Crusaders credit. I don't think anybody saw this as a quarterfinal team, maybe outside of Christian's locker room. I don't think anybody maybe saw this as a quarterfinal team in C1 after I think they won 2 or 3 games last year. Now you're 8-2. You get to go to Aurora, and it's just like we talked about with a couple of other teams here. You're playing with house money, and I don't think a lot of people in the state expected Lincoln Christian to beat Omaha Roncalli. Probably going to be even fewer people expecting Lincoln Christian to beat Aurora. And that's the beauty of it. And Lincoln Christian running that double wing offense, again, if they can hang around, if they can get it into the second half and have a lead, they have the type of offense that they can shorten the game. And that's what it's going to have to come down to. You're not going to stop Aurora on offense. They're just too good. They have too many weapons. They're too deep. But if Lincoln Christian can maybe make this another shootout and get that lead and be able to milk a little clock late, who knows? You've got to put the pressure on these heavy favorites and see how they react to it. Aurora's a team that hasn't really been pushed this year. Can Lincoln Christian push them deep in the second half and give themselves a chance? Yeah,
exactly. I think it's, if you can make it another 45-40 kind of game, I mean, once you kind of hit past the threshold of 30 plus points per team, anything could happen at that point.
Yeah. It's just about what style of game is Lincoln Christian best suited to win in a game like this. They're going to pull the upset feels like a shootout, because if it comes down to a game where, Aurora's got the ball last in a low scoring game, going to be tough. Tough, I think. But yeah, it's again, kudos to Lincoln Christian for putting together a great year and giving themselves a shot again to make the semifinals.
Looking through the rest of C1, we had Pierce win, McCook win, Adams Central, Ashland Greenwood. Kind of, the story that we expected to see. Lakeview knocks off Wahoo, or doesn't knock off Wahoo, but Lakeview beats Wahoo. So pretty kind of the teams that we've seen all season is like, hey, these are teams built for playoff runs. Ashland Greenwood, you want to say making it look easy. They made it look certainly easy last Friday. So if they can get past Boone Central, who also made it look very easy against Minden, that we could be seeing a clash of Aurora and Ashland Greenwood again.
Yeah, that Boone Central Ashland Greenwood game is going to be so good. I think, it's kind of Aurora and Pierce in that top tier in C1. And then I think that next tier is Boone Central, Ashland Greenwood, and McCook. And you've got two of those teams playing each other. Boone Central has played both Aurora and Pierce. Ashland Greenwood has played Aurora. Those two teams combined have 3 losses. They're those two teams. So that kind of tells you where they kind of sit in this deal. And it's going to be one of those classic. You're playing at Ashland Greenwood's home field, Memorial Stadium there in Ashland, down on the Salt Creek. Going to be a great atmosphere for football. Two teams that in maybe any other year in C1 you're going, man, this is a state final matchup type game. And this year happens to be in the quarterfinals, and the winner gets probably likely Aurora in the next round, assuming things play out like the seeds say they should. So this is it's a really, really good game between two really, really good teams. And for Ashland Greenwood, again, give them a lot of credit. They've dealt with some injuries this year too. 2 of their captains are out for the rest of the year. Guys that have played a lot of football for them, guys that are seniors, and they've continued to just do what they have done the last few years. So really, really looking forward to seeing how that game plays out on Friday. That could end up being the game of the night, I think, in the whole state, if it goes how I think it might.
Yeah. Moving into Class C2 again. There were a fefew seed upsets, if you want to say it that way. But the most intriguing one was we had talked about Bishop Neumann, being the 8-win team. Kind of seemed like, not that they miraculously put this season together, but it was an excellent season for them. It was a bit of a surprise, and all Lincoln Lutheran does is walk in and take them down by 10 points, and Lutheran just they've kind of come on late, of course, and it always goes back to they lose the Spirit Sword game at the beginning of the season. Where's this team at? And now all of a sudden, they've kind of just been taking care of business week in and week out. Garrett Hopes has been, maybe the biggest reason why.
Yeah, one of the best quarterbacks in C2, and Johnny Pell's one of the best receivers in C2. Those two have a really, really good connection. It's tough to stop. And you mentioned losing the Spirit Sword game. Who does Lincoln Lutheran play in week 2? Bishop Neumann, and loses by 3 touchdowns. So they're sitting there 0-2. You're going, man, we were talking about this team for a district title, maybe a deep playoff run. Now are they even going to get to the playoffs? Well, here they are, 7-3. They've gone 7-1 their last 8, and the only loss is to Malcolm, who's unbeaten still. So that's a great win for Lincoln Lutheran to turn around a 3-score loss and turn that into a 2-score win. Tells you how far that team has come since the beginning of the season. And that's not even to say that Bishop Neumann has regressed. They had a great year, and they've got a lot of really good young talent. That's a team that's going to be really, really good next year. I think top 5 caliber next year when we get around to doing preseason ratings and all those sorts of things. So a great win, kind of like Lincoln Christian. Congratulations, you beat Bishop Neumann. Now you get Norfolk Catholic in the next round, maybe the best team in the class. So, but again, you get that game at home, from C2 on down. It's the old rule where if you played on the road the week before, you get the home game the next week if your opponent was at home. So Lincoln Lutheran gets the quote unquote home game at Seacrest. They don't have to travel but a few miles. Norfolk Catholic's got to get on the bus and come down. Playing a team again that's playing with house money, playing a team that has a great quarterback and a great receiver and an offense that can keep them in a game and turn it into a shootout if they need to do it. So the pressure's on the Knights. They had a tough game with UTAN last week. And you say tough, they won by 2 touchdowns, but you talk about a team that by and large has been winning by blowouts, a lot of this year. And now all of a sudden last week you have a 2-score game. You go back to a couple of weeks ago, Battle Creek played them pretty tough in a 3-score game. I know that's funny to say. Cedar Catholic plays them tough in a 2-score game to end the regular season. So yeah, they haven't lost, maybe not totally as invincible as we thought they might be. It's still going to be really hard to beat Norfolk Catholic. I don't think there's any question about that. But if you're Lincoln Lutheran, you go into that game thinking, well, we've got as good an offense as anybody, and we've got as good a quarterback as anybody. And so take your chances there and let's see what happens.
Yeah, the other game of intrigue, of course, we mentioned Malcolm, we mentioned Cedar Catholic. How do those two teams match up? Malcolm has been on an absolute tear. Hayden Frank seems to just get the ball and do whatever he wants with it, essentially. But what can Hartington CC kind of do to maybe give Malcolm fits other than stop a Hayden Frank? I mean, of course, that's the easiest way.
Yeah. You're talking about a team in Hartington that's played a really good schedule. A team that's played the best in the state. There's no doubt about that. And so can you use that experience to where, you've been tested, you've played the Oakland Craigs, the Battle Creeks, the Norfolk Catholics, and you've largely held them down defensively. The most points Cedar Catholic's given up this year is 21 in the regular season. Gave up 20 to Battle Creek, gave up 21 to Oakland Craig, gave up 14 to Norfolk Catholic, who's as good as anybody. So can you just find a way to slow that offense down and, again, make it a game into the fourth quarter? We talked about this last week. Brutally tough draw for Malcolm. Another tough test on Friday on the road.
Yeah. D1, we talked about Weeping Water a little bit already at the top. North Platte, St. Pat, kind of cruising still making it look easy. And they get Elmwood Murdoch. We know that, that may be a little interesting, but, looking through, other than the Weeping Water and Nebraska Christian, it kind of seems like, where we're at in D1 right now is kind of what we expected.
Yeah, kind of chalky in D1. I think the Nebraska Christian over Thayer Central is probably the biggest quote unquote upset. Weeping Water seed upset. You look at their schedule, again, played a really tough schedule, battled some injuries. They beat an unbeaten team last week. They beat another one this last Friday. So not a huge shock that they won that game. I think this bracket so far is kind of according to plan. I think St. Pat's, Elmwood Murdoch will be a great game. St. Pat's is without its 1,000-yard rusher who was injured in the last game of the regular season. Can Murdoch go on the road and win a tough one out there? But other than that, this bracket's fun. Aiden Kuster from Neely Oakdale setting the all-time total offense record. That should be a fun game against Riverside. Stanton, Nebraska Christian. Stanton all of a sudden looks like a team that could maybe run through and win this whole thing now that's all said and done.
Yeah. And then looking at D2 as well, kind of, I think we talked about it when we were previewing the entire thing. D1 and D2 feel very similar. It's like here's the team we think will win. Now, who has a chance to jump up? Howells Dodge wins pretty big. You've got Hitchcock County winning big, and then Ainsworth, of course, losing to Elm Creek, which again, seed upset. But I think those were two fairly maybe evenly matched teams. And of course, BDS gets a big one over Lawrence Nelson as well.
Yeah, BDS beating their rivals. That was an impressive win because Lawrence Nelson had a really nice year. So if you're BDS, you feel really good about where you're at. I think I had Ainsworth and Osceola meeting in the semifinals, which shows you about how much I know about this.
I think I had Ainsworth in the final. So
yeah. So, but tough to see the career end for Isaiah Zelastny, who was on our cover this year of the football preview. The great player for Osceola. He'll have a great basketball season. He'll have a great track season. A lot of credit to Elm Creek. Congratulations. You beat Ainsworth in a Power 5 recruit. Now you get Hitchcock County, who beats everybody by 100 points. So it's another one of those house money games. But yeah, this bracket, I think for the most part, kind of went through without a lot of huge surprises, at least from the upset side.
Yeah, and then moving into 6-man, there is some intrigue in 6-man. We've got a Parkview Christian big win, of course. Patriots look like that they have a real shot. I mean, I know it was we kind of joke that's the only shot at a state title in the capital city.
Yeah.
But they looked good. I mean, I know they were maybe playing a mismatched Southwest team, but I mean, again, lose to SEM without, they lose Chandler Page in that game, and then they've just gone on a tear through everything else.
Yeah, you have to think it's got to be hard for that coaching staff to keep them focused on Red Cloud, because you look who's waiting if you win this game. And maybe it's a rematch with SEM to go to the state title game. But yeah, since that SEM game, Parkview Christian has rolled. They're healthy. They looked really good last week. SEM looked really good last week. Potter Dix only scored 109 points, which is the state record for a 6-man game, playoffs or regular season. So they're the pretty prohibitive favorite. But yeah, the intrigue is in those two semifinals at the top of the bracket for sure. SEM and Shelton and Parkview Christian at Red Cloud. If it goes how we think it will go, those two teams are probably meeting in the semifinals, and Parkview Christian will get SEM back on their home field again. So that'd be a pretty juicy storyline should both those teams win this Friday.
Yeah, and it would, that's like you said, the intrigue is at that top half. You look at the bottom half, Potter Dix 109-41, which I believe was their own record they set last year, but there were more points in that game because it was, I think, 101-80, right?
Mm-hmm.
6-man football, gotta love it.
Yeah.
How big of a surprise is that Cody Kilgore? Maybe not a huge surprise, but I kind of thought maybe Cody Kilgore would get maybe a shot at Potter Dix if they could have, upset Arthur County. Instead, they're out in the first round.
Yeah. Defending champs lost to Hay Springs in the last week of the regular season. Hay Springs has to turn around and go right back to Cody Kilgore for the playoffs. You're thinking, okay, the Cowboys maybe can pull this one off. Cody Kilgore scores the first 12 points. Hay Springs scores the last 28. So a lot of credit to Hay Springs in that one. So maybe, again, a seed upset, but maybe not a huge upset when you just kind of look at it, from the eye test.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have plenty of more football coverage, and of course, state volleyball this week. So stay tuned for state volleyball coverage on journalstar.com, on all the Twitters. But for Chris Basnett, I'm Colton Stone. It's been another episode of the Prep Extra podcast.